shooting at these water jugs, distance 100 yards, using a 22-250 Hornady Varmint Express 50 grain VMAX bullet. We're zoomed in on 7 power, getting ready to shoot these water jugs at a distance of 100 yards, 22-250, 55 grain VMAX bullet by Fiocchi. We're zoomed in on 7 power, distance 100 yards, shooting at these water jugs with a 22-250, using a 45 grain jacketed hollow point by Winchester.
Today we will be shooting the 22-250 a lot, and we'll be shooting the 204 Ruger plenty also. You will see convincing evidence that the 22-250 punches harder than the 204 Ruger, at 100 yards that is. But I would be doing you a disservice if I was just to simply stop the tape there. You see, over the last few years now, I have received many of your comments that indicates that the 22-250 is the better cartridge. Hands down, I've been told. And it might just be the better cartridge, hands down, at 100 yards. But you're also going to see evidence that suggests that at 200 yards, it might just be too close to call. And at 300 yards, the 22-250 fans might just be saying, Houston, we have a problem. I have compiled so much tape over the last few days that it's probably going to be best if we just split it into 2 separate videos. So we'll focus mainly on the 100-yard shots today. The 200 and 300-yard shots, we'll get those to you in a couple days from now. We're going to start by looking at the numbers for both of the cartridges and then shoot them at 100 yards so that you can get good and familiar with each. I will announce each caliber and distance and everything else right before the 100-yard shot, just like normal. Then I will shoot one 204 Ruger and one 22-250 at 200 yards. I'll do it again at 300, another 204, another 22-250 at 300. I won't tell you which is which. I mean, I'll tell you what distance I'm shooting at, but that's about all. If you have a pretty good idea of which is which at 200 and which is which at 300, by all means, please put it in the comments. In a couple of days from now, I'll have the follow-up video out. I'll put the link down below so that you can see if your guesses were correct or not. Now, one of the hints I will give you is that for the 204 Ruger, for those 200 and 300 yard shots, we're going to use the 40 grain VMAX. For the 22-250, we'll use the 50 grain VMAX. That's about the only help you're going to get on those for now. If you liked today's video, please remember to click the like button, do subscribe, and turn on the notifications icon if you haven't already done so. And we're definitely looking forward to your comments on this one. Thanks again. Alright, here are the numbers on the 204 Ruger and the 22-250. Where are we going to start to make sense of all of this? I suggest that we start with the ballistic coefficient. Let's start on this column right here. The best ballistic coefficient of all 5 rounds today is going to be the 204 Ruger 40 grain VMAX, BC .275. The worst ballistic coefficient will be the 22-250 45 grain hollow point .175. And you'll see in a minute kind of why those matter and how that comes into play. The advertised velocity for all 5 of these rounds is on this column right here. On the 204 Ruger, the manufacturers are telling us that that should be leaving your barrel at 42.25 feet per second if you're shooting the 32 grain VMAX. My chronograph says that they're doing about 39.53 feet per second, so they're missing their stated velocity by about 6.4%. On the 204 Ruger 40 grain VMAX, the manufacturer is telling us it should be leaving your barrel at about 3,900 feet per second. My chronograph says 36.89, so they're missing the stated mark by about 5.4%. When you look at the 22-250 55 grain VMAX, most manufacturers will tell you that that bullet should be leaving your barrel doing 3680 feet per second. My chronograph has them coming in right about 3400 feet per second even, so they're missing the stated goal by 7.6%. But here are the two bullets that are doing the best job at actually living up to their claims. They're both a 22-250. The 45 grain hollow point manufacturer says 4,000 feet per second. They're not kidding around. I've got them coming in at 4,075 feet per second, so they're about 2% above their stated velocity. And then the 50 grain VMAX bullet by Hornady, the manufacturer says 3,800 feet per second. I have a 6-shot average on those at 37.23. So they're missing goal, but they're only missing it by about 2%. I don't know about you, but I can live with that. In terms of the bullets, how they're going to perform at a distance, let's start with that 22-250 45 grain, since it does have the most amount of speed. Keep in mind that even though it's the speed king right there at the muzzle, when you get up there to 100 yards, it's got 3410 feet per second. That's in a virtual dead heat with the 204 Ruger at 3407 feet per second. However, because it's a much heavier bullet, we got 45 grains compared to 32, it will have quite the edge in raw energy. You've got 1,162 foot-pounds of energy on that 22-250 compared to 825 on the 204 Ruger. Now that same bullet that's pretty much in first place even at 100 yards, when you get out there to 200 yards, now it's in fourth place on speed. Both of your 204 Rugers have overtaken it by then, and even one of the 22-250s has overtaken it. That 50 grain VMAX has overtaken it as well. And when you get out there to 300 yards, it's clinging to fourth place, as it's only beating the 55 grain VMAX by about 37 feet per second. You've got, 2335 compared to 2298 feet per second on your 55 grain offering 22-250. As far as the real competition out there, the real horse race, in my opinion, I think it's between the 204 Ruger 40 grain VMAX with the .275 ballistic coefficient, or would you rather have the 22-250 50 grain VMAX but only a .242 ballistic coefficient? In the real world, they're both about 3,700 feet per second at the start. You've got 3723 on the 22-250 compared to 3689 on the 204 Ruger. Not enough of a difference to argue about. When you get out there to 100 yards, the 204 Ruger, now it has a slight edge in speed, 3291 compared to 3270. But because you have a heavier bullet on that 22-250, you have a lot more punch. You have 1,187 foot-pounds of energy compared to 962. Now the speed disparity will only continue to grow. When you get out there to 200 yards, 204 Ruger, 2929 feet per second compared to 2863 feet per second on that 50 grain offering 22-250. At 300 yards, you've got 2595 feet per second on the 204 compared to 2491 feet per second on the 22-250. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how those perform out there at those distances. We'll be shooting at these water jugs at a distance of 100 yards using a 204 Ruger 32 grain VMAX bullet, Hornady Superformance.
All right, these are the water jugs that were just now hit at 100 yards with a 32 grain 204 Ruger Hornady VMAX. As you can see, the second water jug in line looks like there's no damage. In fact, it's barely even wet. The bullet just pretty much disintegrated when it hit this first water jug over here. Rapid energy transfer right away. Really nothing left of it at all. We'll be shooting at these water jugs, distance 100 yards, using a 204 Ruger, 40 grain VMAX, Hornady Super Performance. All right, these are the water jugs that were just now hit at 100 yards with a 204 Ruger using the 40 grain Hornady Super Performance. It appears that the first water jug is pretty well, demolished. Water jug number 2, it's a little wet, probably from water jug number 1 splashing on it. But from what I can tell, other than some moisture on the outside, no real damage. It does maybe look like there's a spot where maybe a fragment of a bullet wanted to go in. Has a little leak there, but I don't think anything made it to the inside. We'll take a peek here. Looks like it's, from what I can tell, pretty well cleaned out on the inside. No real bullet fragment went in there from what I can tell. We'll be shooting at these water jugs, distance 100 yards, using a 22-250 Hornady Varmint Express 50 grain VMAX bullet. All right, these are the water jugs that were just now hit at 100 yards with the 22-250 Hornady Varmint Express 50 grain VMAX bullet. Water jug number 1 is kind of still here. It was literally blown in half. I'm not sure where the other half is. They're probably going to get me for littering on this one. Water jug number 2, you can see some type of bullet fragment went in there. We had some hydrostatic damage on the side of water jug number 2. And when we look inside of water jug number 2, I don't know if you can see that on camera or not, but there is just a real small bullet fragment still in water jug number 2. And that's about it. We'll be shooting at these water jugs from a distance of 100 yards with a 22-250 using a 55 grain VMAX bullet by Fiocchi. Okay, walking up right now to the water jugs that were just now hit at 100 yards with a 22-250 55 grain VMAX bullet. As you can see, there's really not much left from water jug number 1 at all. Now what's interesting about water jug number 2, it's half full, half empty. From what I can tell though, no bullet fragments actually went in there. But there is, some pretty good damage right there on the side, as you can tell. But again, I don't think any water, or I don't think any bullets made it in there. I think that's just sheer energy shock causing that damage. Let's take a look inside to be sure. From what I can tell, there isn't even the slightest bullet fragment inside of water jug number 2. We'll be shooting at these water jugs, distance 100 yards, with a 22-250 with a 45 grain jacketed hollow point by Winchester. Okay, these are the water jugs that were just now hit at 100 yards with a 22-250 45 grain jacketed hollow point. As you can see right over there, there's a small part of it left, a small part of water jug number 1 right there, and over there another small part of water jug number 1. So it really just took it apart pretty badly. However, on water jug number 2, it looks like we may have some penetration here. That looks like something made it in there. Let's see if we can open up this cap. As we open up the cap, a lot of water starts gushing out of there. And there's definitely bullet fragments, a good amount of bullet fragment in water jug number 2. Okay, here's what remains of the 45 grain jacketed hollow point 22-250. Going to flip that over. It started off as 45 grains. I don't know how much that weighs, but it's not 45 grains, that's for sure. It might be 20 or 25 grains, maybe 30 grains at the most. We'll weigh that when we get home and find out for sure how much weight retention was left on that. We're shooting at a distance of 200 yards. It's either a 22-250 or a 204 Ruger. Shooting at a distance of 200 yards, it's either a 22-250 or a 204 Ruger. Shooting at a distance of 300 yards, it's either a 22-250 or a 204 Ruger. Shooting at a distance of 300 yards, it's either a .22-250 or a .204 Ruger.